Welcome, Ms. Pont. The floor is yours. Yeah, this is Dan Haddee, founder, Haddee Education founder. Here's our experienced college counselor, Ms. Pont. Go ahead, Ms. Pont. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I'm Sally Pont. I've been a college counselor for a number of years and have been blessed to work with some very gifted students and have learned a great deal about the process through them and because of them. And this evening, I'm going to talk specifically about essays. I think that the important message that I can convey to you all from the outset of this meeting is that when your children are applying to college, really what they're being evaluated on is a very small pile of paper. And that paper consists of the application, a few letters of recommendation, the transcript, and the standardized test scores. And so that small pile of paper has to be extremely resonant. And what I tell my students as they embark on the essay writing process, there's multiple essays that go into every single application. When we embark on that process, I instruct them to try to make the readers in the admissions offices either laugh or cry. And if they can do one of those two things, they will get in, because what that means is that they have deeply moved and deeply inspired their readers. Now, I'm going to tell a couple of stories before we actually look at some sample essays. And these stories are designed to make you realize that the admissions office really cares about understanding who the applicants are as people. They want the applicants to come to life on those pieces of paper. And I know that certainly the statistics are out there that there's only that admissions offices only spend 13 minutes or 15 minutes or X number of minutes on an application. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. So I'm going to share a few stories with you to just demonstrate some points. So first off, I'm going to tell a story. This goes back to my very early counseling days. And so I don't actually have an example of this essay. This essay would have been saved on a floppy disk. It was that long ago. And but this was an essay that was written by a young man who very bright, very gifted, and really, certainly it seemed as he was headed into senior year that he was going to be a likely candidate for an Ivy League school. But his father lost his business, and it became imperative for this young man to get a significant scholarship to college. And so we chose schools accordingly. And turns out he did win the Chancellor's Scholarship at the University of Pittsburgh, which is a more than full scholarship, meaning they pay for everything: room, board, books, spending money, summer internships, more than full, lots of money. And what he learned, and that's where he went for 2 years, and then his father's business went back up and he actually transferred to the University of Chicago. But that being said, for 2 years, he went for free to the University of Pittsburgh. And what he learned is that he wrote this, we worked on an essay together, and it was about his love of language. He was not a STEM major. I'm going to focus on STEM majors in a moment. He was not a STEM major, and he wrote about his love of language. And he wrote it in the style that mimicked his favorite writer, James Joyce. And it was very artistic, very artistic. And what the admissions people told him, when he went to receive his scholarship, was that in their final meeting, someone read the essay out loud, and the whole room burst into applause, and he got the scholarship. So there was something special about that piece of writing, and they took the time to listen, to hear, to get to know him through that piece of writing, and rewarded him accordingly. So that's one story to demonstrate that these admissions offices really care about what's on the paper, and they really care about the person behind it. So let me tell you another story. So I worked with a young woman just last year who is currently at Stanford, and she worked so hard on her essays. I mean, over and over, revise, and she applied early, was deferred, but then got in regular decision. And somehow she managed to get into their admissions office just this fall. She's a freshman at Stanford right now. And they showed her folder, and she took pictures with her phone of all the notes that they wrote about her essays. And there were pages and pages of notes by her 3 readers. She had 3 readers, and they wrote notes and notes and notes. And one of her readers thought she sounded arrogant. Now, I don't have her essays up tonight for obvious reasons. But luckily, you know, it was a very startling moment. But that's how sensitively these folks are reading. They could hear arrogance in her tone. And in some ways, I could kind of see their point. Now, she was a brilliant young woman. She applied for computer science. She did everything. President of her class, valedictorian, knew everything, was a champion equestrian, and ultimately did get admitted. But it was, you know, she had to jump through some hurdles to demonstrate that she was worthy. And that was a long year. So that's a story that was a real wake-up call. And I'm as an editor of student essays, I'm very attentive to tone. And I do encourage students to remain humble. And then finally, the final story that I want to share with you, it's not specifically about an essay, but it relates to one of the essays we're going to look at this evening. There's a young man I worked with a couple years ago. He's also at Stanford. But this story is actually about MIT. And I worked with him a number of years, and I wrote a letter of recommendation for him and made phone calls on his behalf. And I called Stanford to talk to them. You know, it's always, it's sort of like being a used car salesman. I can never know when I make a phone call whether they're going to be responsive or not. And I called Stanford. I left a message. Hey, I would really like to talk to you about this student. Please call me back. Here's my number. Well, MIT called me back. And when they called, I pulled up the young man's folder and I went through it and talked about this young man. And all they wanted to know, they did not want to know anything about math or physics or computer science or all the STEM things that he did and did well. They wanted to know what kind of a person he was. They wanted to know about the philosophy camp that he attended. They wanted to know about his relationship with his peers. They wanted to know a lot about that because in his senior year, he took no classes at his high school. He took all the classes at the local college. So they wanted to know that he was a real person. And luckily, he's a fabulous, fabulous young man and just a great, funny kid. And I will tell you, when I hung up that phone, I knew he was going to get into MIT. And I never told him that. And I never told him about that phone call. But on Pi Day, when the notifications came, I was sitting by my phone and I knew it was going to be good news. So they were looking for the person behind the application. And they wanted to be assured that he wasn't a robot, that he was a real, a real viable human being who was going to contribute to their community in all sorts of intangible ways. And I cannot stress that word intangible enough. So on that note, I'm going to have us look at some essays that were successful. And all of these essays, I chose these essays specifically because they were written by students in the STEM field. There's so many essays that I work with so many great kids. but I chose these essays. 2 of them are computer science, and then the last one is by the student whose story I just told, who was admitted to MIT but wound up going to Stanford. It's a very funny essay. But let's start with the first one, because I think that the process of this essay and then the final product, there's a lot to learn here. I hope there might be some students on the call, but if you're a parent, I want you to encourage your children to be as honest about who they are as possible. Now, let me backtrack about this young man. When this young man first, when he first presented this essay, now I worked with him for a bunch of years as well. I knew him and I knew what he loved, and I knew he loved music, but I also knew he was a whiz with computers. And, you know, so he had these 2 very, very distinct strengths, and powerful strengths. When he first presented his personal statement to me, his first draft, which was all written over the summer, he was very wise. He planned well in advance, because it took us a little while to get to the final product. He presented to me, now scroll down a bit, Dan. He presented to me, I'm going to read a paragraph out loud. Let's see. And now, yeah, stop right there. I've been programming computers and studying electronics for around a decade, which is true. He started when he was 6 or 7. And I've been designing and fabricating parts with my 3D printer for better part of a year. I needed my drum sound, and I had the resources to engineer it. With help from my friend Evan, who listens to pop and hip hop, I designed several 3D models. Next, I modified a circuit used with electronic drums so that each channel filtered, rectified, amplified, and converted the signal to digital. Using a BeagleBone, I wrote a C program that scanned each channel in order to create MIDI signals. Okay, the second paragraph is very similar. It's about him creating this computer program for himself so that he could record music. His first version of the essay was only about writing that C program and then changing it into assembly code so that he could record. He had 1,000 words about creating a C program and then changing it to assembly code. It was so boring. It was amazing that he did it, but as an essay, there was zero personality. And I knew that the reason why he went through all this trouble to write the C program, to be able to scan each channel, was to create the music he wanted to create. So I said to him, look, this is not what they want to hear. You love music. And I knew that the kind of music that he loved specifically was Swedish death metal. Now, I had no idea what Swedish death metal was, not a clue. I said, look, Jonathan, what you need to do is you need to explain the aesthetics of Swedish death metal so that they know why you bothered to write the C program and then learn assembly code and make all of this work. And he just looked at me and he just nodded. Okay. And within an hour, he had a brand new draft. So let's scroll up to the top, because the new version where he talked about the music and the aesthetics of Swedish death metal is just so full of personality. So I'm just going to read this aloud to you because I just think this is a riot. Swedish death metal was definitely not the music that made me pick up the violin. To be honest, I can't quite remember what did make me start violin, but for 8 years I played it without really enjoying music. Suddenly, my musical world was shredded apart by Led Zeppelin, the first music that I didn't just hear, but listen to, and I decided to play electric guitar. I searched for more classic rock like Zepp and soon delved into heavy metal, which I'm passionate about for a few main reasons. Its diversity, its sheer extremity, and the nuance that cuts through that extremity. Swedish death metal is my favorite. I love the contrast of guitars and very low tunings and the melodies they produce. I love the harsh, abrasive vocals that accompany unpredictable changes, beginning with Metallica, then Megadeth, and eventually Whitechapel and the Black Dahlia Murder. I've listened to obscene quantities of metal. I'm a metalhead. Now, I assure you, Harvard does not get many essays in which the first paragraph concludes with the sentence, "I'm a metalhead." That is a bold statement. Bold, bold statement. In addition, I would also say this, and this is what I most admire about this. I admire so many things about this essay. You know, this young man knows his computer science inside and out, but he doesn't do it to win contests. He doesn't even do it to make money. He does it so he can record his Swedish death metal. Now, that is as honest can be. And it demonstrates that he, in addition to being a computer whiz and a fabulous guitar player, he's also just a 17-year-old boy. And that level of honesty and clarity and personality is just such a winning combination. So I would bet that in the admissions office, when they arrived at the line, "I'm a metalhead," there was at least a chuckle, if not an outright laugh. Now, in addition, and scroll down a little bit, Dan, because I think that the final paragraph is quite stunning. You know, because this is Swedish death metal we're talking about here. This is not the most beautiful music in the world, you know, because he did force me to listen to it. So the last paragraph is the success. The new configuration ready. I plugged into my floor tom and hit the drum. The snare drum on the plug-in view of my computer lit up. A few weeks later, I was recording one of my band's originals with my triggers. It was a great effort for a small difference, certainly, but it's the small things that make music breathe. Holy moly, what a revelation that the small things make music breathe. This is going to be a young man who puts in effort in every way to make things come to life. That's how he rolls. This is the metaphor for his existence. So I find that to be a very moving and thought-provoking statement. That's a successful personal statement. True to him, 100% true to him. I could talk about him forever, but I won't. Are there any questions about this essay?
Wow, what a piece. Thank you, Ms. Pont.
Yeah. I will say, all in all, it was about maybe 4 steps of revision that it went through until it reached a final product. And I will also note that I was the only editor on it. Oh, are you going to share the Google Doc with us? Certainly. Do you want to pop the link in the chat, Dan?
Yeah, once I share Google Doc, everybody will ask to request. So I will just,
okay.
You are okay. We'll post it on our website with a link.
Okay,
yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lots to learn. Yeah, and I have permission from all these students to share these essays.
Yeah.
So so yeah, just so you're aware, you know, I do try to assure my students that that to keep the number of editors to a minimum. I know that you all as parents will want to know what's in your children's application, but I think that you have to remember that you are not the audience. The audience is the admissions office. And the admissions office, as I said, they're looking for the personality behind the story. They're looking for, what the student is going to contribute to their community in tangible and especially intangible ways. And more specifically, The readers in admissions offices are typically recent graduates of the university who work in the admissions office, who were humanities majors. So there are people who just love to read, love, 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 and they're hungry to be moved by these essays, to laugh, to cry, and to think. And so I, as a person who also loves to read, am the most clearest replica of what the admissions officers are. I read the same way. And when I'm reading student essays, I'm reading for content, I'm reading for grammar, and then I'm also reading for those intangibles that they're looking for. And that the first writer was able to nail it in 4 drafts. Sometimes it takes a little longer. Typically, it takes a personal statement about 2 weeks or so to reach its final form of revision. And then when it's done, walk away. All right, let's move on to the next essay, because I think the next essay is a very surprising and really hits the point that it's not necessarily what you write about, but how you write about it. Now, Stanford, this is one of the essays for Stanford supplement. Stanford has multiple supplements. They currently have 8 supplements. Many of them are short. 3 of them are 250 words, and then the remainder are just about, I think, 50 words. But so what Stanford, and Stanford has the most in quantity. Yale has a lot of essays, almost as many essays. Columbia has almost as many essays. So we're talking about there's a range of school that will ask a lot of questions and expect students to be able to tell different stories and also tell them in different ways. And I think that a truly successful Stanford or Yale or Columbia application, et cetera, when they have multiple essays, is for the student to approach each essay with a whole different mindset. And that takes time. So the writer of this essay, he took his time with the Stanford application, and he tackled each essay in a very meditative fashion. And admitted REA, good question. That means admitted restricted early action. So that was in the early pool, which means he was done early. RD means he was admitted in the regular decision pool. So in the spring. So Stanford asks this one very famous question. It's the letter to the roommate question. And you're supposed to write a letter to your imaginary roommate. Now, this is a very difficult rhetorical situation, because you're not really writing it to a roommate. You're really writing it to the admissions office. So you have to rise up and find a way to address it as if it's to the roommate. And I think this student more successfully did this than any student I've ever worked with who's gotten into Stanford. And I'm going to read it to you out loud, because it's so fun and there's so much personality in it. And he transports us to what it would really be like to be his roommate. So, dear future roommate, before we begin our stay together, I would like to inform you that while I may seem canny and put together, my looks are deceiving. Do not be surprised if perhaps one Friday afternoon, you return to the room after a long day of work to find me hunched over a vent in the floor, a fork in each hand. Don't be alarmed to look down the vent to see an array of other utensils that have by some means slipped through the cracks. It was a simple mistake. I just dropped my fork down there on accident, so I decided to try to fish it out with a fork and a knife, but I ended up dropping those in too, but I realized that a 2-fork maneuver would be much more effective. And now that you've walked in, you can hold the knife and we can lift the 3 utensils out of there together. I assure you that we will not have to call maintenance I have plenty of practice at this sort of thing. I'm looking forward to laughing hysterically in the dead of night with you, to being your wingman, to sneaking out of bed in the morning so I don't wake you, and to explore this new and abstruse world that we have found ourselves thrust into together. There may be some silverware done event, but we'll have each other and a whole lot more forks to fish them out with. Sincerely, Calvin. It's a wildly creative essay. There is nothing specific about what this young man has accomplished. There is nothing, he's not offering to tutor him in math. Rather, he's painting a picture of what it might be like to be living with him. And it seems like uproarious good fun. It's an ingenious response to this prompt. So it would be impossible to replicate it as is, but I think what the takeaway I would like for you all to have is that, a story well told, as this fork story is, becomes a metaphor for who the person really is. And who this person is a person who just is wholly engaged with life. And the transition from the first paragraph to the second paragraph makes that clear. But it's also explicit in the story itself that on a Friday afternoon, he's going to be down on his hands and knees fishing silverware out of a vent. What an image. What an image that's going to stop an admissions office cold. They are not going to read anything like this, I assure you. I never have. All right, any questions about that essay? Okay, all right, let's move down then. This is an essay that was written by a student applying for neuroscience at Yale, and he was admitted restricted early action, admitted early. It was his first choice dream school. He worked all summer on his applications, all summer. And he, was very, now, and just so you're aware, this is an essay that was, of course, used again in other applications. And that's what, something that happens. But so this is a story that I know very, very well. But it's all because it's a common theme. This is I'm going to read the prompt first. Reflect on a time when you've worked to enhance a community to which you feel connected. There are a lot of schools that ask community questions. Michigan is famous for its 300-word community question. In the UC application, they're all 350 words, but there's a community question. There's community questions for Duke. There's a community question for Columbia, et cetera, et cetera. So he did, this was revived again. But one of the things that I love about this essay is, sometimes, with these essays, the writing has to be beautiful, and it has to make the reader laugh or make the reader cry or make the reader think. But it is always nice if the writing brings to life the why, the big why behind what a student has done. The students are going to have their activities list and all the things that they've accomplished. But the question is why. In the first essay, we learned that the student learned assembly code so that he could record Swedish death metal. It's a very interesting why. Why did he do it? To record music. The why in this essay is masterful. But we don't come to it for quite some time because he's busy painting the portrait of his community, and he does it with the most loving tone. It's just so elegiac. It's almost like it's a Norman Rockwell painting except even more alive. So so let me read to you the beginning of the essay, and then we'll jump down to where he connects it to the big why. Indiana, early mornings on the farm, cutting grass alone in the cool, dewy fields. Grandpa and I have been making repairs on the farmhouse and barn since my earliest days. When the steps to the cellar gave way, we built a new flight. When the radiator to the tractor groaned and died, we replaced it. I know small town America like the back of my calloused hand. Blistered summer sun above, I know how to catch bluegill and catfish. Vibrant autumn leaves above, I know how to extract the pulp of a persimmon from its bitter skin. I love my home and my community ad infinitum. So we've got this picture of his community and his commitment and that emotions just throbbing and all of those beautiful, vivid, and very, very graphic details. I mean, pictures galore. But then he starts to go into the why, and the why becomes really compelling and really actually kind of dark. I also know the fear of medicine and science that permeates every wooded hollow in southern Indiana. Grandma has dealt with excruciating knee pain for as long as I can remember, but won't seek surgery because she distrusts surgeons. I know of poverty so suffocating it makes all non-essential medical care virtually obsolete for so many of my fellow Hoosiers. So he's painting this really dark picture of his community. And then he jumps into what he does about it. So next paragraph, for my 2022 Eagle Scout project, I decided to combat poverty and reestablish trust in medical care by creating my own free medical supply store. Wow. Well, golly, that's quite a pragmatic use of your Eagle Scout project, and also very lofty. Now, notice how he's built to that. You know, he establishes his love for the community first, because that's really the most important thing to him. Then the Eagle Scout project is second, because, you know, that's his gift to the community. That's what he tried to do to make the community better. You all can read the conclusion of how that works itself out. But he worked very hard to create a medical supply store that has, as he says, durable medical devices, walkers, canes, toilet stools, crutches, for people to check out and use, and in this way try to create a bridge between the medical world and this mistrustful community. It's quite masterful. And then, of course, he, wraps it up really beautifully with a very thoughtful ending. By practicing the principle of the Scout oath and law, I aim to help modern medicine earn the trust of my community. As Grandpa says, acta non verba, deeds, not words. Wow. And interestingly enough, his grandpa does use Latin, and he talks about that in another essay. So that's completely legit. So it's a very, very well, he packs so many stories. This is a 400-word essay. He packs a lot of stories about his community, about his family, about his Eagle Scout project, about a whole mindset toward healthcare, all in 400 words. That's quite masterful. No surprise he got in early to Yale. Really, really nicely done. Okay, then let's move to the bottom essay. So this is from the MIT application. This is the young man that I spoke with MIT about and had that really, really positive phone call because MIT really, really wanted to know what kind of kid this was, but they could have told it from this essay. So, MIT is a really challenging application. It's not on the Common Application. So if your children are applying to MIT, they'll be, MIT has its own very arcane application with its own separate set of essays. And it's very difficult to because and they're all shorter essays. So it's really difficult to tell the full story. And so, when I was working with this young man who, he's a computer scientist he did a lot of math, and, and he did math competitions. And so my advice to him always was, look, you got to lean into the mathness, but you have to get the other side of yourself in every single essay. And he knocked it out of the park with this one. So this young man loves basketball. He was not a great basketball player by any stretch of the imagination, but he loved it. And he and I could sit and talk about basketball just as much as we could talk about anything else. And he brought basketball and math competitions together in this essay that is so clever. It makes me want to cry. So he's from Ohio. And if you all follow basketball, if at all, who LeBron James is, and he currently plays with the Lakers, but he's from Akron, Ohio. And he played with the Cleveland Cavaliers in Ohio for a number of years. And then when he left the Cleveland Cavaliers for Miami, people burned his jerseys and were furious because LeBron James was the favorite son of Ohio. Everyone loved him. So this is how this young man opens his essay. Quote, "Don't you guys worship LeBron James?" Quote, "Aren't you guys 90% farmland and 10% cows? Throughout my life, I had to defend my state, Ohio, against questions like these from friends who lived in much more exciting places like Los Angeles. The answers to these questions are unfortunately yes, and basically yes. My ultimate goal was to put Ohio on the map for math competitions, just as LeBron had done for basketball." That's the line. So funny that he has the audacity as a little nerdy math competitor to compare himself to LeBron James. But he was so gleeful to be writing this, and it's so funny that he's doing it. And he kept it up. However, unlike LeBron, I couldn't carry a team by myself. And then he goes on to describe his math competition and what kind of a leader he was. And it's really nicely handled. And then let's scroll down to the clever ending, Dan. And then, so he talks about his success at boosting up math competitions in the state of Ohio when they jumped 30 ranks from 46 to 18th. Those numbers don't matter. They jumped. Not a bad turnaround for the Buckeye State. And then he comes back to the punchline. And you could just hear him chuckling as he's writing it. "LeBron's inspiring words drive me. Nothing is given, everything is earned. I'm sure if he knew about Ohio's burgeoning math success, he would smile while continuing to hone his own skills in Los Angeles." So, just the idea that LeBron James would be proud of the math competitors in Ohio is just such a fun-loving idea that it would make anyone in the MIT admissions office smile. And he got in. So, that personality that frames the essay, so much more interesting than the math competition itself. So at any rate, those are some sample essays, and and throughout what's crystal clear is that personality is paramount, and that's what these readers are looking for. And these readers are very deft. They can hear personality. They just like they can hear arrogance. They hear humility, they hear passion, they hear commitment, and they certainly hear a good sense of humor. And that's what they need at their schools. So at any rate, those are the essays I have to show you. Does anyone have any questions about these essays or about the process in general? I can't see the chat, Dan. So
Yeah.
let me go to the full view.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think, yeah, there are no questions at all.
Okay.
This is a great opportunity. Oh, okay. Here you go.
Okay. Okay.
How do,
So how do I guide the students so to start writing the essays? So typically what I do is I kind of tease it. I have an initial conversation with students where I will tease an essay out of them. With the students that I know have known for even a few months, I'll kind of know what I want them to write about. But I'll lay a few options out in front of them, and it's often about an activity or their background, their family background, something, whatever it is that makes them tick, and whatever is most important to them, or something very unusual that they've done that has changed them radically. And then, once we've narrowed it down, to one or two topics, I will start to ask the student questions. Well, what happened this time? And, what did that make, what did you think about that? And who was the person who made this happen? So I'll ask a series of questions until we get to a place where the student says something. And I'll say to them, that's it. That's the start of the essay. And so those conversations can last 15 minutes, an hour, but until I have that moment where the finger points and I say, that's the start of the essay. Now go write. So that's how it always starts.
That's great. So, yeah. Are you in San Diego, Ms. Pont?
I am not. I live just outside of Washington, D.C. However, I work with many students in San Diego. So I almost feel like I am in San Diego.
That's right. You're famous here now. How many hours you help each student?
Well, as long as it takes, it's I can't gauge it. I will tell you, from about August 1st to about January 15th, I am reading essays and working with students on essays pretty much around the clock. I will eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner at my computer. I am on Zoom calls with kids, breaking, doing the talk through with the essay. It's pretty much around the clock because the essays, they take a long time. And even a 50-word essay will take a long, long time because you got to get that just right. You don't want it to be, those are often the hardest. So, so an essay, I will say, I think I said a personal statement will take about 2 weeks. So that means sort of coming back and forth. But if we were to quantify it in hours, I would say a good personal statement is going to take a student to write and revise based on my recommendations, probably about 10 to 15 hours total. Yeah.
Okay. Then what if a parent jump in or another counselor join, another say editor? And you have encountered those cases, right?
I have. So I've worked with students who want, they want to share their essay. They want to get their opinion. They want to get the opinion of other people. And, I will sometimes say to students, look, if you share this essay with somebody, it's perfect. This essay is perfect. Just tell them, if they catch any comma errors, fine. But otherwise, all they're allowed to do is praise you. But oftentimes if a person comes back with something that they really want to change, I'll say fine. Oftentimes what students will get caught up in is something that I'd love to hear someone's voice. Just let me finish this point, and I'll have you unmute and ask a question. What students get caught up in is something that I called sideways editing. You're not making the essay better. You're not making it worse. You're just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And it's just wasting time and making you crazy. So I always want students to stop with the sideways editing and wasting everybody's time. Now, sometimes if you revise it too much, it does get worse because it gets kind of homogenized and the kid gets lost. So, okay, so let's all stop there. And because lots of good questions are coming in. Someone wanted to unmute to ask a question. So why don't you go ahead right now?
Hey, hi, this is Linda. Hi, Dan and Miss Pont. I'm Ryan's mom. Thank you so much for sharing, Miss Pont. I have to say that after the whole season, many parents like me have been listening to various lectures to gain experience or lessons. I'm not an exception. I'm not because I'm a mom of sophomore, but I have to say yours is the best. Thank you so much. This is really a great session.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Yeah, Ryan's
yeah, I do have like a two. I like this session. I like this lecture so much. I do have like a two quick questions. The first one is that you mentioned the college asked the students to write a few different essays. So in principle, are they supposed to echo each other to make a holistic picture of the student, or they're supposed to, or maybe they'd better be individual and independent essays so they can have a more, I would say, comprehensive view of the students? So that's the question number one. And if you don't mind, I can go directly to question number two, which is, I personally hate trauma essay. But I understand that from a writing perspective, the contrast sometimes catch the apples as well. So to draw a line between trauma essay, I'm not sure if I need to explain what is trauma essay, but you probably have a sense of what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I don't really want to sell those sad stories. Even typically immigrant families, we all have like our dark side of the life, but I hate that. I mean, probably personal, but again, between trauma essay and contrast in the writing styles, what is the line and what would you recommend, or how would you suggest or coach people to go over that?
Those are two fantastic questions. So now I firmly believe that I'm going to starting with the first one. So the first one is about, when you have these applications with so many different supplements, should there be a unifying theme, or should it be a little bit more eclectic to show that this is a well-rounded student? Generally speaking, if you look at the phrasing of each question, it's clear that they want to, that Stanford and Yale, I'm going to give as examples, that you can't have a unifying theme. They've almost prevented it by the phrasing of the questions. They want to know that you are a multifaceted person, and and so one essay is not necessarily connected, part of the same narrative as the other essay. So I really firmly believe that when students bring a variety of strengths to the table, they should look at the variety of essay topics as a chance to show how diverse they are in their skill sets. So now, granted, Stanford, Yale, Columbia, they have their big essays and their small essays. Now, the bigger supplement essays should be those topics that are most important to the student. So as you saw with the 400-word Yale essay, that student wants to go into neuroscience and he intends to be a doctor. And so it's a community essay, but it ultimately wound up being about medical care. So he got to the heart of his story in that essay. His other essays were about all kinds of different things. And maybe on some call, I'll show you a really good Stanford full set of essays and show you how, gosh, you can't believe how many things this kid does and thinks and how many voices he can adopt. So that would be another call. So I hope that it helps answer the question.
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you.
And the second question, the trauma essay. So yes, the trauma essay is a thing. And but here's what I would say about trauma essays is that if it's the student's story, it is the student's story. And I will encourage them to write about whatever it is that they've experienced or their family's experienced that has been traumatic. But it is imperative that there be a shining light at the end of the essay, that the student has recovered from trauma or learned from trauma or grown from trauma and has moved to a place that is very mature. So that has to be, that message has to be resonant in any trauma essay. So that's, and I'm insistent upon that point. And that's the challenge.
Thank you, Ms. Pong.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we have more questions. I think we start from none of those above essays are purely done by the student themselves, right? They're all edited by you and have changed dramatically from their first draft, correct?
Well, dramatically, that's a great question. They're edited by me and dramatically. I would say that for the Stanford letter essay, that was probably the least amount of editing I've ever done. I understand what you're saying. I as an editor, I will clean up kids' grammar, make sure everything's spelled properly, but I will never change their voice. Never change their voice. So, when you look at the document and, look at the grammar of the last essay, of the Yale essay, he has all sorts of sentence fragments that work perfectly. And it's absolutely his voice. So, and voice comes from grammar. So there, I edit and I do a lot of rearranging and I do a lot of suggesting, strong suggesting, but at any rate, I don't rewrite. And I could never have written what those students wrote. Only they could have. It was 100% them. I remember when the boy who wrote the MIT essay, when he handed that to me and I read the first sentence, don't you guys, love LeBron. I loved the fact that he put the word like in there because it created voice. It was very clever. So when a good essay, when a good essay comes my way, I just make sure that most of the editing that I do is I get all the garbage out and make sure the good stuff shines.
So to elaborate on this, what if the kids don't have ideas? You help them brainstorm.
Oh gosh.
Right? Yes.
Oh yeah, the brainstorming process before every essay is very, very important.
Yes.
In
so
fact,
that's the key. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the strategies that I often adopt with students in California is to actually do, because the UC schools, they have 4 350-word essays, and there's the 8 prompts, and so there's the opportunity to write about 4 very different things. And if a student knows they're applying to the UC schools, I often have them do those essays early summer, so that they can draw from those essays, and we'll brainstorm those. Okay, we're going to write about this for this, and this is how we're going to write about it. And then that for that, that's how we're going to write about it. That for that. And then the student can keep stealing from those essays throughout the remainder of the process. The UC application is a treasure trove. If they've brainstormed it, written it, and have that by midsummer, they'll be able to use those essays and other applications throughout the process.
Sorry, Ms. Pong, may I? So yeah, you brainstorm their idea, but still students should have something in their life. So will you like a guide the student in early time, like a sophomore or 10th grade, or like a junior year, purposely join something, do something so they can have something to write about?
Yes,
Yeah.
all the time. In fact, I'll tell you, I was a few months ago, I was trying to convince someone to do a summer program, and he was hemming and hawing, and I pulled up the Purdue application, and I said, look, he wants to be an engineer. I said, look, you are going to have to explain in this essay why you want to be an engineer. You're going to have to show them that you know things. And he said, oh, I didn't know. I said, well, now you do. Now do the summer program. So
Well,
yes,
here-
I absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's not quite that aggressive, but he did not want to do a summer program, and he really needed it so that he could, he didn't have a lot in his background for engineering. And if he was going to explain why he wanted to be an engineer, he had to have something in his arsenal in order to make the case.
Thank you. Okay, great. Then another question about how many hours, and it's very particular, how many hours per essay per week, assuming applying for, six college.
I encourage students to get started over the summer, because it takes a long time. I will say I've had students procrastinate and whip them off the days that they're due. Those are not good essays. And all I can do is just, proofread them. But a really good essay will take thought. You have to think about it before and during the revision process. So, even a 250 word essay can take several hours.
That's correct. Okay. And then about your capacity, how many students do you work with each grade? I mean,
Each grade about, 15 or 20.
yeah, the maximum is 20.
Yeah, max.
Mhm.
Max.
Yeah. When should I start this class? 10th grade or junior year? When I think the parent or students asking
When to get a counselor?
Yes, counseling. Mhm.
I think that it's extremely helpful to start with a counselor earlier rather than later, unless the student is extremely self-motivated. I could never have called the MIT admissions office unless I knew that student really, really well. I could never have told that kid who wrote about assembly code that he needed to write about the aesthetics of Swedish death metal unless I'd heard him play it.
See.
So that's based on years, my counselor relationship of several years. Now, granted, I've worked with kids in just, with just in just a year, and they've been successful, but it's better, more comfortable, and more satisfying if it's over a longer period of time.
Thank you, Ms. Pong. Yeah, I think we're just hitting the hour, 10 p.m. your time. Gonna make really quick. How do you pick which topic to write?
Oh, it's based on the kid and the student's experience.
Yeah.
Every student is completely different. It's a blank slate, and where their story dictates it.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think there are differences between public schools and private schools with regarding to essay writing?
That's a great question. I could go on and on. So yeah, I do. I do think that right now in admissions, a trend is a little bit of pushback against perceived privilege. So I think that students who go to private school need to be very, very careful about not presenting themselves as being overprivileged. It's delicate, yes. So
Yeah.
that means, but public school kids don't need to worry about that.
Okay, yeah. So I think as a student, question, you shared some successful examples, what the lessons you have learned in the past.
That nothing, no, even the best of writers will never write the perfect essay in one draft. Never, ever. And that it takes a process, and I've certainly learned that. I've also learned that that when the student is enjoying the writing, that it actually is the most effective. I can when an essay is successful, I can hear the student enjoying explaining or describing the thing that they love so much or are so deeply excited about or moved by. You can hear it. So if they're really, really into it, so that's I think, half the battle is to get the students so engaged that they're producing things that are presenting their best selves. And then I, as an editor, can help them, make that really, really polished.
Thank you, Ms. Pont. Yeah. And then results of your students this year. Where are they going, Ms. Pont?
All over the place. Lots to Berkeley this year, turns out. Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego and Irvine and Stanford, 2 to Stanford, a couple to Yale, a couple to Duke, 1 to University of Chicago, got it off the wait list. So a nice range. Let's see.
Michigan.
Yes. Yes, I got 1 or 2 going to the University of Michigan, and
music as well, right?
I know. Yes. So some really, really wonderful results.
Medical school.
Oh, and yeah, I do work with students who are applying for medical school, and that is not an easy process. And so we had a nice happy ending at in about midway through the spring. Student going to Mount Sinai Medical School. Yes. So yeah, the whole range. This was a really good year for Stanford for me and for Yale. Two going to each of those places.
Yeah, class of 2024, you have a powerhouse of the students, right? This year coming up.
Yes, this will be a very fun year.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, going through any students.
I'm going to answer this question. So, I talk. Thank you for asking that, Brian. I don't set a bar in the students I work with. I mean, it's easy to brag about Yale and Stanford, blah, 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 as if the sun rises and sets on those schools, and they don't. There are so many wonderful schools, and I work with a range of students. And so the students that I am working with who are going to Ohio State, or who are going to the University of Maryland, or who are going to Appalachian State, I love them, and I am delighted that they are going where they are going, and they are pleased as punch. So I'm not going to talk about the SAT tonight. So
okay, last question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about Chat GPT. So I think I've used Chat GPT and I've tested it, and the grammar is so clearly identifiable. I could spot it from a mile away now that I've played with it. It's outstanding. The logic is brilliant. But it is logical. So any student who turned in an essay which even had portions from Chat GPT will be painfully obvious. And I am sure everyone in admissions offices will be able to see it too, because the grammar is exactly what it is.
No personality. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No personality.
But it's smart.
This one-
There's no doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
Just want to quickly chime in. They do have a software how to identify which essay is written by GDB. So the admission office has that kind of software available now. It's developed by a student from Yale. From Princeton.
Right. Right. Yeah. But even still, you read 2 sentences and you know.
Okay. Yeah. So last question is also from Brian. How do you motivate your student? Singing their voice from their heart.
Well, I think that, you know, the bottom line is that I really like the students that I work with. So I you know, it starts there. You know, I am interested in their stories. I want to hear their stories. And I you know, and so when I'm pulling those stories out of them, I want to, I'm interested and excited. And when, you know, when they get to the core of it, to the heart of it, as you say, I'm so intrigued that they recognize, okay, that's it. That I didn't even realize that was my story, but Ms. Pont is reflecting me back, and now I'm realizing that is my story. So it's in the process of teasing out the story of that initial brainstorming session where I ask them multiple questions until we arrive at that moment of, that's it. That's the story.
This is great. So I have one last question. Do you think as teenager, they know themselves well, or it's really helpful for an experienced adult teacher like you to get the stories out of them? Like some DIY kids, they do everything themselves. They know that I know everything about myself. Like, so you know, teenager psychology. They don't.
Yeah. No. It is a rare teenager that is self-aware. Very, very rare. And I think that, you know, even these kids who wrote so well, they're surprised afterwards. Oh, I didn't realize this was who I was. And then they've learned something about themselves through the actual writing process. So your average 17-year-old might have many qualities, but self-awareness is not typically one of them. So I have many students who do not want to share their essays with their parents. And so what I typically say is, look, why don't you do this? Submit your application, then share the essay with your parents.
Yeah, both of my kids got help from Ms. Pont. I never read their essays before they submitted. You know, I just pay, give them the credit card. That was the first one. I was on the spot, you know, paid. And the second one, give the credit card to him, that I wasn't even near the computer with him. So, and I think they turned out pretty well, right?
They turned out pretty well.
Yeah, they're both studying computer science at Berkeley. So, okay, it's very late, Ms. Pont. We'll let you go. If parents are interested in Ms. Pont's summer program, also Haddee summer programs, we'll take 5 minutes to share with you, or we'll let Ms. Pont go. Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night. Thank you, Ms. Pont.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, we're going to share this whole thing on Haddee, and then just look for the note. We have the summer program. We just said Ms. Pont's class is pretty much booked, but just let you know, the title is Writing for Competition, and we'll submit the piece for the Harvard International Review writing contest. It's very complicated writing contest. It's not only about writing, it's also about research as well. And the folks are going to ask what time. And the time is, you go on the website and we will put on the chat. And then you can open on the mobile side. This is the mobile version, and you click details. The details, it's the time your local browser If you're Beijing, that's Beijing time. If you're in New York, that's New York time, okay? If you travel, you need to sign out and sign in, that's your local time. So you don't have to ask what time is it. It's automatically synced with the local time, okay? So that class you asked me, it's about 10 classes, 1 hour each. And we total take 8 students and it's 8 booked, okay? And starting with, it's mid-July. And so you will be booked, I think, probably after tonight, okay? So that's one. And then for other writing, we have very, very good writing classes, and we'll show you here. We also have Miss Miano. Her students are doing really well as well. Edie Rice this year and some other schools. She's a professional writer. She writes as the full-time job is writing and also teaching and college counseling. And Miss Miano's class a little bit longer. It's 12 session, and there's a detailed time, and I'm not going to go through the time. It's about creative writing foundation, and you can see from Miss Pont's sharing tonight is those creative skills are very, very important. People say just essay, and they just say, oh, I did this, I did that. It's clearly more than that. So if your students can command creative writing skills, that will be very helpful, okay? And then we talk about a lot of writing, but you can't really be a good writer unless you read a lot. And I try to read every single day. It's really hard. I'm very busy, but I try to read every single day. I love reading, okay? And the reading there's 2 things to it. One is the speed of reading, and the other one, the comprehension capability. Why reading is so important. Anything you want to get an output, writing is an output, you need to have input. So people are learning language. I wasn't foreign language major for my undergraduate. I learned how to take input before I provide output. So reading is the foundation of writing, of good writing, okay? And this speed reading, I personally took Miss Dana's class as well. She teaches on a regular basis. I took it during COVID online with younger students, 6th grade, 7th grade, 12th grade. And the kids can be mixed together. Sometimes one adult or 2 adults join as well. She's gonna have your student pick one book that you like, your level, but use the techniques she shares and practice it and document it. And so you will see the measurement from class 1 to the last class. I think many of the Haddee students already taken it, but I encourage you utilize the skills during practice. It's very important, okay? Both of my children learned speed reading during middle school. I had to teach myself some speed reading skills before I started at Cornell for my graduate school, because the reading materials was so immense, okay? And then a lot of parents and always ask us like, how the kids do time management. I myself as guilty as well. Time management is very, very important, okay? And because time is limited, right? And for everybody. So Dr. Montes, and here's go. It's a short class, and you can see the introduction and study skills. Dr. Montes is also our counselor, and one parent asked whether Ms. Pont is in San Diego. Ms. Pont and other counselors we have are not in San Diego. Dr. Montes is in San Diego. She has a PhD in higher education, okay? She's academically trained to educate. Her PhD is in education. So she will teach with 3 small sessions about time management and study skills, very short and sweet. We're going to start the session 1 here. If everyone likes it, we're going to add more time, more class time, okay? And then we also have persuasive and informational essay, okay? That's what Miss Miano will teach this class as well, and as creative writing. She was an award winner author. She teaches really well. Different style from Miss Pont. Everybody is different. Miss Dana is completely different as well, okay? And lastly, I don't think any Berkeley students here. We have a few short programs for Berkeley incoming freshmen. I used to live in San Diego for 27 years. I just moved to Berkeley. My older son is graduating from Berkeley this year, 2023, and this weekend is graduation ceremony. So we're very happy. And the younger one is a sophomore. So we move here, but I go back to San Diego and the Southern Cal all the time to meet the parents. That's why I'm also WeChat parents group for each year incoming freshmen parents group. So if your students are attending Berkeley this year, you can add me, okay? So I will put my WeChat here. But I think all this flyers you join, all the groups you join, you will see. So this is my WeChat if you want to personally WeChat, and my phone number as well for US students. If you want to send a text, that's fine. If you don't have WeChat, no problem. So those are the programs. And then lastly, I'm going to show you in person. You're going to ask, oh my gosh, everything's online. Those programs are online because we can mobilize the global teaching resources. We have about 100,000 teachers database with Haddee, okay, 100,000, not 100, 100,000, okay. And so we are doing some in-person camp, and this summer camp and taking kids to Arctic, 4 islands near North Pole to conduct scientific research. It's already sold out by the end of February. I personally am going with some US students. It's a global team. I think over 100 students going to attend with 15 professors will conduct 6 areas of research. Each student will pick one, okay? Don't worry if you don't make this year. In the winter, we are going to Antarctic winter, Christmas, Chinese New Year, 2 trips, okay? Next summer, we're gonna go back to Antarctic again. We'll take kids to Amazon, okay? This is a partner with a different a cruise company. So watch the notice on that one. And then, okay, you're gonna get more interesting. In the US, if your students have nothing to do, so like, oh, I'm just gonna go play games. Usually in the US, starting 8th grade or 9th grade, kids do not attend those babysitting programs because they can stay at home, parents work, right? And I don't think my kids attend a lot of summer camps, starting 8th and 9th grade. And but we do take some time travel as a family, 2 to 3 weeks. However, this is a very, very unique sports camp, okay? It's not really for athletics. It's for the kids who are interested in playing sports with a team. So you can pick one of the 4 sports: basketball, baseball, soccer, and volleyball. It's a residential program. You will be here in Bay Area near Stanford with most of going to be the Jewish families and Jewish students, okay? And this is I'm helping JCC, Jewish Community Center of Palo Alto, to share, and has nothing to do financially, completely separate. We're just helping out because the marketing director is my personal friend for 35 years, okay? Nathaniel heads up the marketing for JCC in Palo Alto. And this about a month ago, and I think, and the spots are very limited. So this is not a lot of kids and parents say, oh, I'm going to go to math competition, Yale summer program, Stanford summer program, all academic, Johns Hopkins. And as Ms. Pont has shared, it's really about personality, about experience that your students command, and intangible character. And I think being with a diverse group of American students play sports together, know how to collaborate and read books together, watch movies together, and being independent for 3 weeks and exercise the body, exercise the mind. I think it's an awesome, awesome experience. And the folks are going to ask me, why not upper grades? Because upper grades are completely sold out. Those kids, they start younger, they go there every single year because they love it so much. Okay. So if you're interested, yeah, please contact us ASAP and we'll connect you to the director right away. And lastly, and this is going to be the last sharing I have for tonight, is this program. If your students, if parents are really, 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 really busy, and if your students are attending a summer camp in the US, the parents are overseas, and you can join us for college tour, okay? For college tour. So what we do is we help book a group college tour, like with Harvard, with MIT, and Harvard and MIT will have a guided tour, okay? And then we have students, we're gonna guide you guys with reading some books, discussing what you have learned, and also just relax, okay? And seeing a very interesting part of the Boston, New York City, going to Yale, and then travel to Philadelphia, try the cheese, the Philly cheesesteak sandwich, and then go to Princeton, and also end up in DC. So it's a very busy schedule. It is really a fun trip. It's not like a big name, like, summer camp, but your students will have firsthand experience of a lot of colleges and see, am I really want to attend NYU or Columbia? Do I really like New York City? Is Princeton a little bit too boring because it's in suburban area? So I think it's a firsthand experience. You don't really have to go, before you apply for those schools, but it's for something fun. And also we have team building, like teamwork, people work together, or students work together. So, and we have very, very experienced teacher who is very familiar with Boston and New York area will guide us. And this trip is sold out for this one, from June to July is sold out, and we're launching the second one starting July 21st to early part of the August. Will be very similar schedule. So anyway, my sharing going to be stop right here. Do you guys have any questions? 有什么问题吗? Any questions? No questions at all? Okay. If you don't have any questions.
Hello.
Okay, go ahead. Hello, please.
Hey, this is Charles. Hey.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for sharing this wonderful seminar. It's really great. I can see a lot of passion in Ms. Pont. And how do I sign up for a class? I went to your website and see the class, but I don't know how to sign up.
Well,
Is this...
yes. If you are a teacher, if you are a parent, you sign up as a parent, and then you click a class, look for, say, the Harvard International Review, and you will just add a student. You will add a student, and so a parent can add multiple students. The parent can take a class. Parent can add multiple students to take a class. So each class will be reminded to you and to your student. Before 24 hours and 1 hour each. If you really are lost, just WeChat me. I have
we're talking in person. Yeah. Sure. No problem.
my whole team will help you. No worries. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Good. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today, and thank you for supporting Ms. Pont and all the Haddee educators. And have a great night. And see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.